Hello malt mates, or welcome to the Whiskey Bothy. I'm Ralphie. Welcome to review number 1134. I've got a little glass here and I'm just about to review the contents of this glass as part of a series of whiskies that I've got in my stash, which means your drinking collection, your investment collection, but not that you're kind of speculating on the fashionability of whiskey growth. Many people are getting their fingers burnt and will do it so in the future, but rather whiskies that I've bought in past years that I thought, this is really, really good. I'm going to buy another bottle and put it in the stash and keep it aside till later. Now's not the right time to open it, but I will find a day, a rainy day or a fair day or whatever day, to actually open these bottles. And this is one of them. This one, by the way, I bought it retail. But you will find these at auction. And I bought this for the stash and haven't opened it since I bought it for well over 10 years, because it was a curiosity. So there was no rush on it. It's not as if people were waiting for the latest mega hit malt moment. It's an obscurity. It always has been obscurity. It always will be. But ironically, there's a genuine backstory and authenticity to this whiskey, which I think is really worth being aware of. So this big wooden box, and in this case, the packaging relates to the story of the whiskey. It actually tangibly relates. And this is the Shackleton Enduring Legacy bottling, named after Ernest Shackleton, a British explorer in the 19th, 20th century. Here's the bottle there. Here's the box, and at the bottom of the box you have, if I can, give me a second. Where's my little poke stick? I need a poke stick. Hang on. The soda spoon will do. Let's get it out. So what you get is a cheap wooden box, which is totally in keeping, which is slightly reinforced, quite rustic interior. It has shaved wood instead of genuine straw, but the original whiskey would have been in genuine straw. It has a spare cork because back in the days when they first were bottling this whiskey, they were using driving corks to seal it and make the seal stronger. But they would provide you with a cork stop for when you open the bottle, it would be easier just to seal and unseal. So what you have is, in the packaging, an authenticity of narrative. Now, this is a reproduction, and in my opinions, an authentic reproduction of a number of bottles of whiskey that were found in about 2010 when the New Zealand academic authorities, who are responsible for kind of caretaking part of the Antarctica, went to inspect what was left, which is remarkably a lot, of a wooden shed. Put this aside, actually, it's getting in the way, of the explorer Ernest Shackleton. And whilst they were there examining the coat hangers and tin mugs and the bare essentials that you need for an expedition to a very, very cold environment, a very hostile environment, they discovered a hole in the floor. And when they raised it, they discovered that underneath the cabin, and this hadn't been registered, they weren't aware of this, underneath the cabin there was a cold storage area. In other words, a freezer, which is very easy to find in Antarctica. And there were a number of bottles of whisky down there. In fact, 2 crates of whisky, bottled by the McKinley Whisky Company. Highland malt whisky, bottled and blended and bottled by Charles McKinley and Company, blenders and distillers Leith and Inverness. Now, this is a classic example of a real old family business from way back in the mists of time, which has been bought over successively into bigger and bigger companies until it ended up in the stable of White and Mackay distillers. And originally it would be basically Glenmore, small distillery outside of Inverness, or in Inverness, and it had that Highland character. Generally good quality, because in the Highlands they do things more slowly and meticulously, because the survival depends on people coming back to buy more, and it's to do with their isolation. Oh, the smell's coming out to meet me, and it's just, is it smooth? No. Is it soft? No. It's just young, fresh, zesty and youthful. That's what it is. This whisky is as authentic as is possible to get these days. A reproduction to celebrate the discovery of these bottles of McKinley's rare old Scotch whisky, which went on the Antarctic expedition with the explorers under the British flag, and at a time when the British Empire was looking for their standard bearers. They were looking for their superstars, the right sort, the benchmarks, the inspirational figures. And Ernest Shackleton was one of those. He was, by the way, subsequently replaced by Lawrence of Arabia, who was arguably a little more naive and more easily managed in the beginning. But that's a distraction here. I will cover more in that in the extras here. I want to go into the authenticity of narrative regarding a whisky, and why this is particularly interesting, because it's not a brilliant whisky, but it's an absolute historically genuine story, and there's very few of these. I mean, I can think of one situation where there was some engineers doing some field work in Panama, and they came across bottles of whisky just stacked under a shelf of coral in the middle of nowhere, which was part of a stash of some geoengineers that were looking to build a canal. And they just went ahead and opened them and drank them. So these things really never survive. It's like, would they have whisky if they had an Egyptian expedition to a hot country, in fact the complete opposite of the Antarctica? And yeah, they would, because whisky was medicinal. It was antiseptic. It was restorative. It was a little bit of home taken abroad, which had remarkably stable shelf life. Anyway, I've given this a few minutes to open up in the glass. Give you a little bit more basic information about the bottle. They've kept a kind of sort of original label, sort of. But this has been bottled at 47.3%. And unusually for White and Mackay, I really don't think they've done much in the way of chill filtration. And I think the reason for that is it was such an oddity, they just handed it over. I mean, the board of directors would be shrugging and just saying, we don't care what you do, just give us the maximum publicity. You know, give us the glow factor, and we'll come in our private jets when you're ready and enjoy the celebrity press release, and then we'll head off and have a game of golf. So they're not particularly interested in the history, because they're entrepreneurs and business people. But the master blender, Richard Patterson, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. And in my opinion, nosing this and tasting this, he got the remit. The nose is fantastically, deliciously, authentically barley cream. So it's almost barley brulee. Absolutely delightful. Vivid vanilla notes. You'll have to excuse me, by the way, if I come across as just a little bit fuzzy at the moment. I'm still on antibiotics, hence I will not be tasting much of this whiskey. And these are powerful antibiotics, and I'll be discussing them to a certain extent with my Patreon subscribers, my pals, because they knock the stuffing out of you, seriously. Back to the whiskey. The nose is a joy, particularly on a warm day. This is a blend of malts, in my opinion. If there's any grain in there, it's really old-fashioned grain that's been very simply distilled. It's got none of the sophistication of modern industrial liquor production. And I think that is deliberate, to use the mindset to go back to the late 1880s, 1890s, when this whiskey was made. It was quite simply a different world, different landscape, different culture, different attitudes, and far less industrialised, far less technology. And Richard Patterson has replicated this very successfully without being sentimental. It's not smooth, it's not rich and creamy. It's far more what an experienced whiskey drinker would expect to see forensically from this style of bottle. First taste. Higher strength. Why would that be? Simply to carry more flavour and help retain the quality. Unpeated, completely unpeated. Crisp. Lashings of heather honey. Barley sugar galore. Softest sultanas. Crisp lemon. Beautiful green herb sours, including oregano and a touch of sage. There's spearmint, there's menthol, there's another mint in there, possibly apple mint. This is a delightful whiskey. Now, so as I don't forget, this is the first edition. There has been subsequently several more editions of this whiskey, and they are not half as good as this. I tasted one of them visiting a friend, and I had to be diplomatic in my opinion and reposition the story back to the historical narrative so we could have a fine old conspiracy theory session around the Antarctica. I've added a full teaspoonful of water to this whiskey because I'm not hanging around here. I have a mission, I have a purpose. I like the glass coating that's going on here. This suggests to me that very little has been done in the way of chill chill filtration to reduce the mouthfeel and the texture of the whisky, and already to some extent it's being validated by the slight haziness which is appearing in the liquor itself. Look at that colour. What does the colour tell you? Let me tell you what the colour tells you. There's no caramel added. That ain't no tan. It certainly ain't no fake tan. How reassuring is that? The job has been taken responsibility. It could have been turned into nothing more than a jingoistic mouthpiece for the marketing department, but in my opinion, some senior management and the master blender have saved the day and respected the fact that there are people out in the real world who actually know a thing or two about what whisky should be, can be, and used to be. Another nose. Settling down now. A little bit of fudgy. It's changing direction already. Oh my goodness, this is delicious. This is a bottle I am not going to rush. It will probably take me about 10 years to finish that bottle. I'm in no hurry. There's a little bit of baked biscuity coming through. Oatmeal biscuits, just a little bit of that. The hayness, grassiness, that little kind of zesty summer haystack in the middle of a field on high noon on midday in the zenith of the summer. And there's something totally nostalgic about this, despite the fact that I never will, and none of us ever will, get to try the original authentic bottles of McKinley's that were part of the legacy of the Shackleton expedition to Antarctica. They are basically national treasures and will not be disturbed until they're stolen or whatever happens, or just the ravages of time. This is getting some lovely Antarctic mist in it now. Can you see? I'm so reassured to see that. It just automatically lifts the entire experience. It reminds me of a fuller, creamier version of Bailey Nickel Jarvie, which is a modern blend, still available, equivalent of a very traditional style of Scotch whisky blending, which we don't see so much now, because everything has got to be sweet, sweet, sweet to cater for the Monster and Red Bull generation. Brig, fresh, zesty. Get a little bit of peach in there now. Peach and pineapple. I'm going to give this a malt mark. It's definitely well earned. Specifically for the fact that, in my opinion, all things considered, as much as any whisky company can do such a thing, to faithfully reproduce a whisky roughly 100 years after it was first made, 85 out of 100, really good result. And here's the irony. Here is the sting. Many collectors haven't a clue about this because they're waiting for another Kurosawa or Macallan or anything slightly wonky by Ardbeg. And good luck to them. Let them find what they're looking for, because the Scotch whisky industry is more than happy to fulfil their needs. on a regular and rapid basis. But for the genuinely collectible stuff, this is highly recommended. You can still buy a bottle of this at auction, hammer price, for around £100, €100 a bottle. And I think it's worth the ticket because of the genuine narrative that surrounds it, that is actually very rare in Scotch whisky. Very rare indeed. Such a tangible historical narrative. And it's not the fact that you've got that narrative, that's all good, but it's the fact that it's backed up in the bottle by the whisky, which is, I don't know if it's anything like the original, because I'll never find out. And I'll never, none of us will know. But we can use our imaginations, and we should never underestimate the value of our imagination in making our decisions as to what authenticity is. This is quality stuff. Congratulations, White and Mackay. Shame about the later versions, but this one has been well worth celebrating. Glad I bought a bottle. It's been sitting in my stash for a long time, but here we are, 16 years or 14 years later after buying it. I've finally got around to opening it and sharing it with you. And as far as I'm concerned, and I hope you find it's the same, makes for great content. See you for the extras. Bye-bye.